It is pouring all over the internet. Pornography, methods for taking our children, victimizing our children, our teenagers. We're going to talk about this in the second half of the show, what the problem is, how massive it is, and what you can do as a parent to protect your children. But the first half of the show, I want to talk about what's taking place, not on the internet, but what's taking place in the classroom. This is outrageous, folks, with regards to the new sex education curriculum, how it's pouring into our classrooms, how it's impacting our kids, victimizing our children and our teenagers. To talk with us about what's taking place right now, we have with us on the line our attorney out of our Oregon office, Ray Hacke. Ray, welcome to the show.
Glad to be here, Brad.
Okay, now, Ray, we've got a real problem here, and one of the biggest parts of this problem is that people don't know, parents don't know about it. They don't understand it. They hear sex education, they think, well, it's, maybe someone feels uncomfortable in some way. No, this is really serious. Tell us first about the problem, about this new wave of, quote, sex education, comprehensive sex education, and why it's not just about the birds and the bees, and it's something that the average parent out there should definitely know about. What's going on?
Okay. Well, it's not your mother and father's sex ed class, that's for sure. It's about more than the science of how babies are made or how the physical changes kids go through as they grow into young men and women. It actually gets into the nitty-gritty of how to engage in certain sex acts. The thinking is kids are going to do it anyway, so they may as well be taught how to do it safely.
Okay, now my problem is that big assumption they have is that kids are going to do it anyway. The stats are that teenagers today are significantly less likely to engage in premarital sex than they did in my generation in the 80s. It was actually significantly higher. Now, some say it's because of the video games and other things distracting them, but the reality is there's a lot of kids out there that they're assuming are going to need all this explicit information planted in their minds that otherwise really wouldn't need it or wouldn't even think about it or even progress to that point. So it's very counterproductive just looking at the stats. And yet it's going on. Tell me more.
Right. Well, schools have a duty to promote abstinence over birth control. In fact, that's the law. The problem is that the law also prohibits teachers from preaching abstinence exclusively. They also have to provide information about contraceptives and other disease prevention measures.
Okay. Now, when they talk about abstinence, that's another problem I see is that in the past, abstinence has been you don't do it. You wait until you're married. Simple. My understanding now is under the guise of, quote, abstinence, they're teaching kids sexual alternatives to actual intercourse where you can have a baby. They talk about all different other kinds of ways of engaging in different kinds of sex acts and stimulation and et cetera. So my problem I have with this is that they're saying, oh, yeah, we're promoting abstinence, as many states require, but they're really not promoting abstinence from sexual activity, and that's the real problem. So when we look at this, what should the average parent know? How deep is this problem?
It's very deep. I mean, basically, it starts from all the way at the top. You've got the state Department of Education, coming up with different curricula and basically mandating, use this one, use that one, or given a wide variety to choose from, and basically saying, in order to, school districts have to adopt one of the curriculum that they provide in order to comply with state law. And so, school districts are feeling the pressure, even when parents come out in force against it, to really just because they don't want to lose their licenses. So they come out and they pretty much just adopt these curriculum regardless of what parents have to say about it.
Now, when we talk about the parents being notified about this most school districts, most states across the country require some kind of notice to parents. But my understanding is the notice that parents are receiving, first, it's sort of tucked away with some other papers and mumbo jumbo that the average parent at the end of the day coming home from work is not going to read. They just chuck it. They go, oh, it's just a bunch of bureaucratic stuff that they send me about a bunch of stuff. So they don't even really actually receive notice. And then the notice that they actually receive, my understanding, Ray, is that it's just very vague, general notice. It doesn't really tell them explicitly, this is what your kids are being exposed to. These are the pictures, these are the diagrams, these are the sex acts that your child is going to be exposed to and even recommended to potentially engage in. Is that a correct a synopsis of what is actually taking place with regards to these quote-unquote notices?
Well, yes, Brad, that's correct. I mean, districts are being less than forthcoming. Sometimes they'll put the curriculum online, but they won't put it on in its completeness. They'll take out the controversial parts and they'll just show just the general stuff that people can supposedly live with. They're not going to show the stuff that's completely outrageous. Other times, like I'll give you a real good example that's coming up. The Hillsborough School District here in Oregon. Basically, they're having an open house at a local library tomorrow night, where basically parents have 90 minutes from 6:30 to 8 p.m. to look at the curriculum. Now, this is a district that serves 20,000 students. Now, assuming that every student has two parents, I don't think even a fraction of that 20,000 is going to get a real chance to look and review the curriculum and provide feedback.
Yeah, this is a one-time open house. They probably didn't have punch and cookies. That always bothers me when I go to open house. No punch and cookies. But anyway, so they have an open house, and they're only having a short window, an hour and a half, and parents are not going to have an opportunity, really. I mean, unless they can fit in their schedule. A lot of parents it's just one-parent families. They're not going to be able to look at this. Arguably, this should be made available in multiple different ways. It should be made available on the internet. Parents should have a password. They should be able to go in, look at it. So we have a real problem with notice. Now,
yeah, well, Brad, if I may jump in.
Sure.
You mentioned the internet. Well, there was a school board meeting about it just last Tuesday, and the school district put the proposed curriculum on 5 hours before the school board meeting.
What?
5 hours.
5 hours before the school board meeting, they put this material about the curriculum and made it available just 5 hours before? I mean, I don't think that's a bureaucratic blunder. I don't. I mean, call me overly suspicious, but I look at this as just an overt attempt, which we see as a pattern in public school districts, courtesy partially of the teachers' unions, blinding parents, meeting the technical notice requirements sometimes, and yet trying to get away with this. I know when a school district in California, in San Jose, they decided to give a real immediate quick notice to parents that they're bringing on two individuals to talk about their transgender lifestyle and relationship to young little children in the elementary school level. And yet they thought they could get away with it. We stepped in and we sent them a demand letter and say, we're going to sue you. You didn't give the proper 2 weeks notice. They immediately halted. They backed off. And then they gave the proper notice. Fortunately, because of the media exposure we got, a lot of parents did find out about it. But even if they give the proper notice, even if they give enough notice, parents are often still not going to know about this. They're still not going to be aware of it. This is comprehensive sex education, folks. We're not just talking about the birds and the bees. We're talking, Ray, also about different kinds of sexual activities between men and women, men and men, women and women, correct?
You are absolutely right, Brad.
Yeah.
Couldn't put it better myself.
Yeah. So it's very disturbing. What can parents do? What can we offer for parents to do who are facing this, not just in Oregon? I mean, this, folks, is going off across the country. What should parents know about their options right now, and what are many parents actually considering?
Well, many parents are considering, not only opting out, which is their right under state law. They can opt their kids out of this comprehensive sex ed, but more important, they may just opt their kids out of public schools altogether. Some of them may be homeschooled, some of them may be put in private Christian schools where they don't have to worry about this sort of thing. And that's the thing that that a lot of people are recommending. Now, we understand that it may be cost prohibitive for some parents, but at the same time, because the schools get money based on the number of kids who are actually in a public school, the more public school kids are pulled out, the more money the schools lose. And so we're hoping that that will put some pressure on the schools to maybe rethink what they're doing with regard to comprehensive sex ed.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I think parents need to be looking at their alternatives. And for many parents, the only alternative, other than leave the state and go to another state that hasn't been infected yet, is to homeschool because they can't afford private schooling. And yet many say, I can't homeschool. I'm a one-parent family. I don't have the resources. There's several options here. First, you can have your child participate in a homeschool consortium. This is where parents, homeschooling families get together once or twice a week. They do some tutoring. They give assignments. You can also have it on the internet. There's incredible homeschooling programs on the internet, folks, that your children can take advantage of. And even your church. I encourage you to maybe talk to your church. It can be a tiny church, folks, but you can have like a homeschool consortium where parents from the church and maybe reaching out to the community can get together and start a homeschooling program. In fact, if your church wants to grow, this is one of the best alternatives and ways to bring people into your church is to start a homeschool consortium, because there's so many people who are even non-believers, they don't go to church, but they know there's a problem and they're looking for solutions. This can be your opportunity for your church and your community to be that solution and to reach out and help to save children from what I call nothing less than spiritual genocide. Ray, thank you so much for the work that you're doing. And I want to remind people also, if they want to get opt-out forms, that's a wonderful tool we have on our website for free. Go to pji.org. That's P for Pacific, J for Justice, I for Institute.org, pji.org. If you have a child or grandchild in public education, now is the time to do it. Make sure they're protected. It's not foolproof, but it does give some solid protection pursuant to your state laws. We have them customized to all 50 states. Go to pji.org, click resources, and download these free opt-out forms. Ray, God bless you, and keep up the great work.
If parents knew what was happening, I think they'd be very, very alarmed.
It's not about procreation. They're learning about lifestyles, sexual activities.
This stuff is XXX rated.
And we say no to that.
You're giving girls very high doses of testosterone, and it's going to harm them.
California law requires that school districts actually put a positive spin on the HIV crisis.
This is about sexual roles together, boys, girls, boys and boys, girls and girls.
You can't teach this in an unbiased way. It's a moral topic.
A lot of graphic information that is confusing.
Tells little boys it's perfectly normal to masturbate with other little boys because everyone does it.
Choose their gender.
The role playing in the class.
That's our children.
So what do?
We need all of you to rise up to fight for kids.
If you'd like to support the Pacific Justice Institute, we greatly appreciate that. Just go to our website, pji.org. That's P for Pacific, J for Justice, I for Institute.org. And there you can also sign up to receive our Legal Insider. This goes out once a week, and it informs you about things you will not hear on regular news media, but it's very important and something you can also pray for as well. So go to our website, pji.org, and you can also download these opt-out forms I mentioned earlier. They're so helpful to protect your children, protect your grandchildren. This is a no-brainer. They're without charge. We don't charge for our resources at Pacific Justice. We do our work completely without charge. All of our cases, everything. So go to our website, pji.org, and protect your family and your community. Now, we have with us here in studio, I'm very pleased to announce, someone who has been actively engaging in protecting and defending our children in a very comprehensive way, dealing not with the schools, but with social media and the internet, which I understand is actually the greatest threat and the greatest challenge. Opal Singleton, welcome to the program. You are President and CEO of Million Kids. First, tell us about your organization.
Well, Brad, thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate it. Million Kids is an organization that's combated all kinds of sex crimes for kids over the last 10 years. We work with the Riverside County Sheriff Department and the Department of Justice, but we also have educated in schools and law enforcement all across the nation on issues related to social media exploitation. Okay, so you're around the country, you're providing resources, educating. I heard you speak, and I was so impressed with the depth of understanding of the knowledge, but also the solutions that I had to have you on this show. I thought people need to hear this. So let's first talk about the depth of the problem. We have the internet. The average parent says, well, the internet's a problem. I think I got a filter or something on my computer. My kids should be protected and safe. First, how widespread is the problem? I understand that, I think you said that 18,000 kids are sending, on average, daily, 18,000 kids are sending naked photos of themselves. Yeah, is that hard to believe? When I read that, that's by the Center of Disease Control, so they ought to know, I suppose. Well, let me define the problem for you, because first of all, let me state, we are at a unique time in all of history. We really are. What is about to happen is next year, for the first time in history, the entire world will be connected by internet. Now, I'm not against technology. What an amazing time to be alive. You know, just think of the opportunities for our kids and our grandkids. So this is a unique time in history, but it's also a very historic and important time in history. As you know, I wrote a book on this called Societal Shift, A World Without Borders, A Home Without Walls. Literally next year, for the first time in history, the entire world will be connected by internet. And that means that that our kids can reach the entire world, but the entire world can reach our kids. Ooh. And while that's amazing, exciting opportunity for leadership, which I highly support, that parents get involved in making leaders of our kids, a world without borders for our kids is a world without borders for pimps, for predators, for pedophiles, for gangs, for cartels, and organized crime. And these new technologies mean literally these guys can come right into our kids' bedrooms. As you were saying, 18,000 kids a day send a naked photo. 9,000 kids are being blackmailed with that photo. 59,000 kids are being blackmailed because someone intercepted that photo. 58% of them go out and meet the pedophile and try to negotiate that back. Let me give you one more. Just a second. Go ahead. That was huge, what you just said. It's scary. You said basically per day, 18,000 young people are sending out naked pictures of themselves. Right. And you said half of those, more than half, are being blackmailed. Okay. That's right. And then more than half of those end up going out and meeting with the pedophile. And they end up getting exploited. On a daily basis, we're looking at several thousand then. Right. It's about 8% of our nation's young people. This is why I so much appreciated you when you brought me on, because with all this going on in the world, in my opinion, this is the most exciting and also terrifying concept of what is going on out there that parents need to adjust, and we can do something about that.
Right. Now, so it's widespread. Mm-hmm. Quickly give an assessment. Like the average parent's going to say, well, okay, my kid is not on the internet talking to gangs or pedophiles. He's doing video games. He's doing the social talking with other teenagers.
They're on dating sites too. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, what should they be looking for? What are we talking about? What's the hypothetical where an average family, church-going family, great, how are they being impacted? Because a lot of parents, I'm going to tell you something, a lot of parents are going to be in denial when they hear this, say, well, oh, that's terrible.
Yes.
I'm so glad that it's not my child.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Why should they be concerned? Specifically, how does it work? How do they actually bring their child into this garbage and end up victimizing the child?
And then how do we protect them?
Right.
There's two major trends going on that is causing this. 87% of kids who out there sleep with their phone. That's a statistic that's been put out. That means at 3 o'clock in the morning in their underwear, in their most vulnerable place, a pedophile can come right between the sheets and say, hi, here I am, let's get acquainted. So number one, mom and dad, don't let them sleep with their phone. That's crazy to do that. But there's also a new technology out there. It's a technology type. The two biggest ones are TikTok, TikTok, and Likee. Now, they're not bad apps, but mom and dad, I need you to understand how these are different than how your kid has been operating in the past. I get it all the time where moms go, oh, my kid's only talking to people they know. That's not possible on these. These are mass audience live streaming apps, and we are just getting started. This is the way of the future. When you go on an app like TikTok or you're not just talking to 100 or 150 people. You send a video out there with the idea of going viral. As I showed you before you and I were talking, it is not uncommon for a teenager to have 1 million followers. Brad, think about this. If you've got 1 million followers following your kid, at least 1% of them are pedophiles. That's 10,000 people that are trying to reach your child. Now, these new apps not only reach a lot of people, but they're tied back to your child's text so they can reach your child.
Wow.
Huge.
Okay, that is huge. And those are mainstream places. I mean, TikTok and
Likee, 2 E's.
Okay. So let's say a parent hears this and they say, well, gosh, my son or daughter is on this. Is looking at this stuff. Should I block it? Should I tell them never to go to these websites? You're going to have some pushback from some angry adolescents, some teenagers.
Yeah, and on top of it, we're just getting started. This is the way of the future. Remember 8 years ago when we were terrified to put our kid on Facebook because there might be somebody on there they don't know?
Yeah.
Those days are long gone. Those are horse and buggy days. What's happening is we're just getting started. In the future, your child will be able to reach the entire world, and the entire world can reach your child. So we must make leaders of our children. Now, I'm in the process of making a documentary that I really encourage, and I hope that your listeners, as this develops, will get involved with. It's to train the parent and train the kid on how the internet's made and how these apps work differently so you can protect them.
Excellent.
If your kid has TikTok, get it yourself and start to sit down with your child and let's make leaders of them. This isn't going away, but what we need to be able to say to our kid is, look, if you know 1 million people and 10,000 of them are pedophiles, you are going to have a lot of people contacting you with things. How are you going to know which ones are good and which ones are bad?
Right, and your documentary is going to help instruct that. And you also have a book that gets into that too. Let's talk about that book real quickly.
The book is called Societal Shift, A World Without Borders, A Home Without Walls, because literally we have just entered an era where absolutely millions of people will be able to reach your child and be able to dialogue with your child, and your child can dialogue with them. I was thinking about this with what's going on politically right now is how does a child know what's truth? We hear both sides, and if you have 1 million people that can reach your child. We need moms and dads today to stop in their tracks and say, hey, our world turned. I need to buy societal shift. I need to understand what this means. And I need to make a leader of my child. For me, Brad, this is the DARE program of this generation. Kids don't want to be violated. Kids want to be leaders. And kids are the first to try out all these new technologies. But they come with no warnings. Right. And the kid is running off, trying all this out, and mom and dad's running along behind going, you be careful on that thing now. You know, we must bring the parents up to date, and then we must make leaders of our kids.
Okay, now what website do they go to? Because you're not done with the documentary. They can order the book. But I encourage people out there, if you're listening to this, write this down, go to their website, sign up, so then when the documentary comes out, you can take it and you can make this available to not just your family, but also to your church, your synagogue, whatever, to get it out, get it distributed. Where do they go?
They can either go to Million Kids, MILLIONKIDS, millionkids.org, or go to Facebook and put in Million Kids and hit like, and you will see all the cases that are happening out there, and you will see all about these new technologies.
Yeah, millionkids.org.
Right.
And I will tell you, it's sort of mind-boggling. Many parents may think, well, this is just too consuming. I don't want to know.
No.
They should not put their head in the sand. These are their children. God has given them that responsibility.
Right.
Do their children have choices? Yes. When they hit adolescence, they have choices. And they reach adulthood, they have choices. But as parents, we have a choice as to whether or not we're going to be responsible with what we can do. And your book talks about it. Your documentary is going to talk about it. But I tell you, just the whole concept of 1% of a million, 10,000, would be watching our sons and daughters.
And talking to them.
These are pedophiles.
Right.
And every day, such a huge percentage that are being led to slaughter. It's mind-boggling, and yet we can do something about it. Once again, your website,
millionkids.org. I think this is the greatest mission of all time for parenting is to teach our kids to be leaders with technology.
Right. millionkids.org. Thank you once again for being on the program.
Thank you for having me, Brent.
Thank you. So, folks, there you have it. It's our God-given freedoms we're talking about. Now, let's choose to keep them. I'm Brad Dacus, president of the Pacific Justice Institute. Have a great weekend.